Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto was bound by the whirlpool of love? Naruto times Kushina Part 2. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's start. Chapter 4, Mother's Day. Kushina had her hands full. She coordinated the many volunteers, but were interrupted sometimes by snobby wives of rich merchants who wanted to exploit the festival to improve their standing with the Hokage's family. In contrast, the wives of the major clan heads were really uncomplicated. After all, they knew the reason for their festival. The life of shinobi was harsh. You could die on every mission. Sometimes families were unfortunate to lose both parents, making their offspring orphans. She established this festival after Naruto's birth, as he had almost lost his parents too. The image of her child growing up in an orphanage made her sad. She shook her head, trying to banish the depressing thoughts. After all, she had to work to do. Kushina-chan. Makoto squealed, as she hugged her oblivious friend. Makoto-chan. Kushina shouted, returning her hug. Out of harm's way, Sasuke observed the perverse scene of two adult women squealing and hugging each other, like they were small girls. Sasuke, a familiar voice shouted behind him. He turned around to see Naruto coming along his way. You decided to help your Okasan. How unexpected, Naruto stated, surprised. As his thoughts wandered back to his lovely Koyuki Hime, a dreamy smile appeared on his face. Sasuke, are you alright? Naruto asked, worried. He hadn't ever seen this stoic Uchiha making such facial expression. Sasuke was thrown back into reality, trying his best to put on the trademark of the Uchiha clan, an impassive expression. Sasuke-chan, tell Naruto about your dream, Makoto shouted, totally destroying his previous efforts as a blush crept up his face. Oh, that must be a really nice dream, Naruto said, a mischievous glint gracing his eyes. After some teasing, Naruto decided to greet Sasuke's mom. He really liked Makoto, even when she was a little too crazy for his taste. She was quite attractive for her age. She was not really old, but 6 years older than his mother, making her 42. Her onyx-colored eyes had something magical in them. Their effect was increased by her raven black hair which reached past her shoulder blades. If he had to compare both women, Makoto would get the characteristics, beautiful but utmost crazy and manipulative, whereas his mother would get, easy to anger but totally cute when excited. After exchanging greetings, Naruto and Sasuke were assigned to a group of volunteers by Kushina. Hey Onichan, play with me. A little 5-year-old girl asked Sasuke, looking at him with puppy eyes. The other female adults on their playing table squealed in delight. Play with yourself, Sasuke stated coldly as he tried to push the little pest away. Oh Sasuke-sama, he's so cool. One fangirl stated with dreamy eyes, as she made plans in her mind to rape poor Sasuke-chan. Fangirls are dangerous. Yeah, and he's good with kids. Another fangirl added. Besides their blurred reality, Sasuke tried to fight off the little girl who really wanted to play with her funny Onichan. Sasuke, you are popular with the women folks. Maybe you should give up on being a shinobi and start producing grandchildren. Makoto-san will be overjoyed, Naruto stated with a grin on his face. He couldn't believe how stupid his fans were. There's only one for me. Sasuke responded angrily at the sight of dumb fangirls sullying the great name of the Uchiha. Go away little brat, pester someone else. Abruptly the girl was silent, too silent. Quiet hiccups were escaping her throat. Now you've done it. Making a little girl cry. A hero of the Uchiha clan. Naruto scoffed. Come here little girl, the duckhead Onichan is stupid. Naruto gestured with his hand at his lap. The little girl sniffed and walked to Naruto, where he picked her up. As she sat now face to face with the stupid Onichan, she turned out to be a mischievous little girl, because she started to blow raspberries at Sasuke. Naruto couldn't help but laugh. Kushina-chan. Naruto has grown into a fine adult. Makoto stated as she looked at the ludicrous scene. It's only sad that my son doesn't get along with children. Kushina turned her head to her son's table. There was a little girl squeaking and laughing on her son's lap. She smiled at the sight of Naruto and the girl throwing stupid and childish words at Sasuke, who sat there visibly upset. Subconsciously she registered this particular event, reclassifying him not as a son but as a possible lover. Naruto-sama, you're natural with kids. The female beside him exclaimed amazed. At the unexpected statement, he turned his head to see her face. He didn't know her name, but he was sure that she got her Chunin promotion last month. You don't have to call me Sama. My father is the one who is Hokage, I'm only a regular Jonin, Naruto responded, diverting his attention back to the little girl, who started to doodle a ridiculous image of Sasuke. He had to fight hard to restrain his laughter. Meanwhile the kunoichi moved directly beside Naruto, as they were now stool by stool. She looked at the picture and started immediately to giggle. Even Naruto couldn't restrain himself anymore. A hearty sound of laughter swashed through the air. Astonished, Kushina looked for the reason, a smile graced her face. Her festival was a huge success. But as she saw the picture in front of her eyes, her smile vanished. A foreigner would mistake the laughing trio for a happy family, two young caring parents, delighted by their daughter's doodle. Normally the picture would be exemplary for a well-functioning family. But she couldn't stand the sight of a different female than herself clinging to Naruto's arm. Now the corners of her mouth were as flat as the best Uchiha. She started to emit an cataclysmic aura, as an unfamiliar jealousy took control of her body. She narrowed her eyes at the woman before muttering manifold cuss words, none of them in the slightest G-rated. Makoto looked worried as she tried to free her friend out of her stasis. She mumbled some very bad words. It pained her, but she had to resort to violence, giving the redhead a light slap. Kushina, what's going on? Makoto asked as she looked for a visible sign of life. Kushina snapped out of her stupor, rubbing her sore cheek. Ouch! What was that for? The redhead retorted, giving her best friend an harsh glare. You looked like you were going to murder innocent rabbits. Someone had to stop the imminent slaughter, Makoto responded, giving her a playful wink. I didn't mean to. I don't know what's wrong with me. Maybe it's the stress, Kushina stated, but in reality it was a futile attempt to reassure herself. She glanced a last time at her son's table, seeing an overjoyed girl hugging her newest favorite person. At that time, some very deep instincts kicked in, changing irrevocably her point of view of her son. It was already late evening as Kushina and Naruto walked home together. They were one of the last people leaving, because they had helped to clean up the aftereffects of the festival. On the one hand Naruto was overjoyed, because he could make a little girl very happy, at least for one day. On the other hand he felt depressive as he imagined that maybe his future daughter could live in an orphanage. The thought of him having a little girl of his own to love and to cherish, to protect and to shelter, to see her smile every day, made him sentimental. But there are always two people involved, Naruto thought mirthless, totally oblivious to person beside him, who had her own share of problems. That stupid bitch. Playing happy family with him, Kushina ranted angrily in her mind. Many women were surprised to see Naruto got along well with children, increasing his popularity by the village's bachelor girls tenfold. He was already popular, mostly because of his being the son of their Hokage. But now, he proved to be a good father too. Unbeknown to our two Namakazes, the gossip was already spreading through Konoha. By tomorrow, his fan base would grow drastically, making him the most popular bachelor in Konohagakure. Kasen, what is it like becoming a parent? Naruto asked his mother, breaking her out of her thoughts. Well, Kushina considered her answer, while she was stared at by a curious Naruto. You have to take a lot of responsibility. I want to know what it feels like. What did you feel? Naruto asked, unsatisfied with her previous answer. She could see a magic glint in his eyes, like he was very eager to gain knowledge about this topic. I was happy, no, rather overjoyed. Like I was on the top of the world, Kushina stated, truthful to her feelings. Naruto looked at her in amazement, as her feelings poured out her, giving her body a warm peaceful glow. I'm somewhat jealous of you. I would love to experience this feeling, Naruto said, with a slight grin on his face. And somehow, I wouldn't mind experiencing this feeling with you, Kushina thought, after hearing his bold response. Distracted by their conversation, they found themselves already in front of their house. It was a modest property for a Hokage. The village's counselor tried to persuade his father to move in a more bigger and lordly house, but he always refused, saying that's the place he had founded his family. 20 minutes later, both of them sat at the dining table, drinking some green tea imported from Kiri no Kuni. Naruto praised her, because of her engagement for their village, making her face blush. What's wrong with me? My heart is beating so fast, Kushina thought as she recalled today's events. Somehow I felt really jealous seeing Naruto with that dumb girl, she admitted to herself, nodding her head. Meanwhile, Naruto decided to keep quiet and observe the strange behavior of the female in front of him. Okay, he's very handsome. And he is really good with children, Kushina stated the facts mentally. Yeah, and he's a damn stallion in bed, a voice in her head added. That's right, I love how he can make me. Stop, what are you doing here? Kushina angrily questioned her alter ego. I beg your pardon, I'm only planning to provide us with a little god, her alter ego stated soberly. Why do you think I need sexual intercourse so badly? I'm completely fine. You don't have to. Kushina tried to reassure her counterpart, but was interrupted by an heated response. Don't give me that crap. As a matter of fact, we share the same feelings and the same emotions. I know you want to be coveted by Naruto. You love to be desired physically by him. That's something Minato hasn't given us for years. But he's my son. I'm his mother. It wouldn't work, Kushina countered, slightly defeated. True love transcends all boundaries. Are you really happy with the way it works? No caress, no passion, only being the Hokage's trophy wife. Then settle for your boring life. Or do you feel that life has prepared something better for you? Something special. Her alter ego spoke before vanishing into Kushina's vast subconsciousness. I'm all sweaty. I'll take a shower and go to sleep. Good night, Kasen, Naruto said as he stood up after deciding that he had seen enough of her strange behavior. It's now or never, Kushina thought as she rose her head. Naruto was about to enter the stairs, which connected the first and second floor of the building as Kushina abruptly stood up, causing her chair to fall backwards. As he heard the bang of wood hitting wood, Naruto stopped dead in his tracks, turning around and looking for danger. Are you all right? He asked her, visibly worried. She circled the table in silence, so that they stood directly in front of each other. He furrowed his brow at her strange behavior. I want to make a proposal. Kushina exclaimed in a nervous voice. Naruto tilted his head, so that he could see directly in her eyes. After all, Naruto was 6 inches taller than her. He gave her an questioning glance, silently asking her to continue her speech. It's an indecent proposal, Kushina whispered, as she lowered her head. Naruto put his index finger under her chin and slowly moved her head up so that Naruto could look into her eyes again. There's not an indecent thing in you. Naruto whispered in a loving voice and placed a soft peck on her lips. Kushina closed her eyes and smacked her lips, savoring every tiny bit of his taste. It was a brief kiss, but so incredibly innocent and emotional, that it drove her simply crazy. I didn't told you anything yet. What are you doing with? Her cute, but meaningless resistance was silenced by a second kiss. The second one was a little longer, giving him time to tease her lips with his tongue. She gave him a betrayed look as she got no chance to use her own tongue. Let me explain my prop. She was silenced again by the now third kiss. His tongue begged her lips for entrance, which they gladly granted. In her mouth started a battle for supremacy. Her efforts were eager, but in the end Naruto won the fight and dictated the order in his new reign. After 20 passionate seconds, both of them needed to catch breath. Kushina braced herself by putting her hands and head on his torso. She could hear his calming heartbeat, making her cozy and dizzy. Let me finish what I am saying, Tte. Kushina exclaimed, in a last-ditch effort to get her son to listen, although she had to breath hard because of their previous prolonged kiss. Naruto snaked his arms around her hips and placed his chin on her head before stating, there's no need to tell me anything. I already know. Kushina's violet eyes widened in surprise. Was she so easy to read? Her musings were interrupted as Naruto took her into his arms bridal style. Her arms instantly embraced his neck in order to give her back somewhat balance of her body. His movements caused her long red hair to waver in the air, giving her an angelic appearance. He carried both of them to his own bedroom, stating that tonight she would be his guest. In his room he asked her the most important question of the night. Do you want to take a shower with me? He wanted to strip her out of her clothes, but she slapped his hand away, stating that she would feel dirty and sweaty. He told her that he wouldn't really care, but accepted her decision nonetheless. With a couple of fluid and experienced hand movements she took care of her fiery hair. Now a bun graced her head, reducing her hair length enormously as it reached just about her shoulder. He observed her thoroughly, memorizing every part of her body, as she started to undress herself. And huge red blush was creeping up her face, because of his embarrassing observation. He took her hand and guided her in his bathroom. Luckily his shower was big enough so that two people could fit in and move around comfortably. Naruto opened the water tap, accurately adjusting the mixture between warm and cold water. As he decided that the water temperature would be right to fulfill his lover's demand, he turned the shower head, splattering her with the warm liquid without warning. Eck! Kushina cried out, surprised by his action, earning a hearty chuckle from his lover. She decided to take revenge as she grabbed for the shower head. However, Naruto straightened his arm, and it was now too far away for Kushina to reach it. As she started to sulk, Naruto couldn't resist anymore. "You're so unbelievable cute," Naruto said with a huge grin. Then he placed the shower head in its mount and turned around to Kushina. He snaked his hands around her hips, pulling her against him. He groped her butt in order to feel their soft plumpness. A soft moan escaped her throat, only to be silenced by a sloppy, wet kiss. "I love your bottom, it's so firm, yet, so soft," Naruto praised her before giving her a special thorough groping. Naruto turned her around, so that she had to place her hands against the wall. He bent down, relishing in the sight of the two most beautiful cheeks in the world. He placed his hands on the side of each cheek to feel the soft tissue of her butt. Grinning wickedly he started to pull them apart just to push them together again. "Don't spread my butt. Your nose is poking my butthole," Kushina exclaimed appallingly. However her words didn't meet her actions, as she started to push her butt against his face. Next he ground his teeth against her exposed flesh, causing her to squirm. He held her firm in place as he produced hickey by hickey on her butt. Kushina cried in pleasure. She was on cloud 9 as Naruto ravaged her firm butt. Like a gourmet, he savored every tiny bit of her cheeks with relish. She was as ready as a woman could be after feeling the heavenly pleasure as her butt was eaten up by the one she loves. As she could feel his teeth sink in her plump butt, she couldn't help but start squirming. By now her powerful lubrication began to drip out. "Your butt is dangerous. It looks like a ripe fruit. I couldn't help but try to taste it." Naruto acknowledged the appealing force of Kushina's rear section. He was ready to accelerate the pace. Her sore butt could now rest against the cool wall. Naruto was mesmerized by Kushina's. A thin thread of juice started to dangle down from her labia. He took advantage of the favorable situation and twisted it around his index finger. He ate up the rare delicacy and savored it with gusto. I shouldn't have done that, my boner is killing me." Naruto moaned his misfortune. "Hindsight is easier than foresight." Kushina giggled. His erected member started to throb painfully, an unmistakable sign of neglect. He really wanted to pound his in her unparalleled, but first of all he wanted to explore her love canal with his tongue. He began to lick carefully her inner labia. They had an unique sweet and sour flavor. He took them in between his lips, tenderly pressuring them in order to achieve a reaction of his lover. A deep moan escaped her throat, as she grabbed his hair. Kushina used her other hand to push him deeper into. The next thing he would do was to tease her clitoris. His tongue brushed against her sensitive organ every now and then in order to make her crazy. Without mercy and without warning he forcefully latched his mouth onto her entrance, producing the lewd slurping sounds she loved to hear. Kushina was in ecstasy, as his tongue parted her folds and pierced her inner canal. It started to jump around, causing her to produce even more of her sweet nectar. After tasting his beautiful queen in her most private part, he decided to feast on another delicious part of her femininity. He rose from her thighs, causing his erected member to slap against Tarbed. He tilted his head to give her a long, sloppy kiss. "Now you can taste yourself," Naruto exclaimed before exchanging fluids of saliva and female ejaculation with Kushina. She was caught off guard by his action, because normally someone wouldn't try to eat his own ejaculation. However, she was pleasantly surprised by her own taste. He directed his glance at her boobs. They looked like ripe fruits too, inviting him to take a taste. He brought his head to their level to observe the erectness of her pink nipples. You both must be pretty lonely, but do not worry. I will adopt and take care of you. Naruto spoke in a tender voice. Kushina rolled with her eyes at his ridiculous form of affection. Put your head in between them and something wonderful will happen. Kushina told him, a bright smile gracing her face. Naruto couldn't defy his queen. He complied her command and pushed his face in the valley of her round soft globes. And now, MMPHHF. Naruto was silenced as Kushina pushed her hands against the sides of her boobs, sandwiching him in the middle. Ah, yes. Lick them. Suck them. Taste them to your heart's content, Kushina ordered giddily. Naruto broke free of her pleasant ensnarement just to take the areola of her right boob at whole. She threw her head back, completely enjoying the feeling of suction. He used his tongue to tease her engorged nipple, causing her to moan naughtily. He loved to hear the pleasure he was giving her. After giving her an equal share of attention, he noticed that the shower was not the right place to take things further. Playtime is over. Come with me, Naruto ordered as he closed the water tap. Kushina was taken aback by his forceful command. Tonight I will not stop until I stained completely in white. Kushina was heavily aroused after his bold statement. What? We didn't shower yet, Kushina tried to persuade him, as she was pulled by him back to his bedroom. He threw her on his bed, while deciding what he could do with her on his next move. His eyes sparkled with anticipation, as he started to crawl toward her. Kushina didn't like the look he was giving her and started to slide toward the bed head. Naruto shook his head at her cute attempt to escape, but he grabbed her ankles, constraining further movements. What are you planning to do with me? Kushina asked with a mixture of concern and excitement in her voice. I'll make you feel good. But first of all please undo your bun, Naruto asked. He rubbed her ankles with his thumbs, while she complied his demand. Her long red hair fell down behind her back. Naruto kept hold of her hips and started to pull her to the footboard. He stopped his movement as her butt rested ahead of the edge of the bed. Her magnificent head of hair laid out spread over her on his bed. Only her strands, which framed both sides of her face, were now resting on her collarbone. In summary, it was a sight to behold. Gorgeous, Naruto whispered in a low voice at the incomparable sight. His trance was interrupted by an giggling Kushina. He gave her a questioning glance. You know I used to hate my hair. I'm somewhat happy that there's someone who could be so mesmerized by it, Kushina said warmly. Naruto was appalled. He totally adored her red mane. We do have to talk about the proposal. It all has to end when your father comes back, Kushina told him. Naruto smiled, a sign of his approval. He picked up her feet in order to give her a nice comforting massage. What do you think? Like lovers? Naruto asked as he played with her petite toes. Like lovers? Kushina repeated his question as she understood the meaning of his question. Her face blushed and the beat of her heart increased. In short, her body was on fire. Like lovers then, Kushina whispered, giving him the signal he eagerly waited for. Then you will cease being my mother for the next 10 days, Kushina-chan. Naruto smiled as he spreaded her legs and crawled on top of her, so that they were face to face. Her bosom was squished between them and his erected member rested at her entrance. The feeling of his tool rubbing against her labia made her crazy. Next he entangled his fingers with hers before raising their arms over her head. She was completely at his mercy as she gave away the last opportunity to brace herself. But he wanted to build up more tension in her. Naruto attacked her defenseless neck, torturing her with sweet butterfly kisses. After producing 1 or 2 hickeys on her sensible skin, he kissed her on the mouth. Deciding it was now time to release her of her pent-up tension, he pushed his throbbing member slightly forward. He entered her only by an inch, but her inner wall was already clenching his member for her dear life. He could hear her moans, although muffled through the passionate kiss they were sharing. 8 inches later, the tip of its head rested directly in front of her cervix. A final thrust caused a touching between the two lovers. Her inner walls fluttered around order to map the structure of the bold invader. Its bulging veins and swollen head were immediately registered by her genital. Her prepared everything necessary to reduce the friction between them. Her lubrication started to flow in even bigger amounts. Naruto moaned in between his breaths. Kushina was happy as he praised her private part. But she wanted to give him dirty talk too. I love it when your swollen tip kisses my cervix. I love the feeling of enlarged veins rubbing against the folds of my walls. It makes me crazy. In order to intensify the thrusts, Kushina wrapped her legs around his back. She wanted to brace herself, but Naruto was holding her firm by their entangled fingers. She arched her back as another wave of pleasure hit her. He increased the pace of his thrusts. His balls were now slapping against her bottom. It was like their first time. He was very eager to receive a fountain of her ejaculation on his balls. Normally he would feel a slight pain when his balls were about to release a moderate amount of sperm. But as she sprayed her love juice against them, the pain vanished into nothing. Thrust harder. Faster. Kushina commanded, as she felt a familiar knot of heat building up in her abdomen. "Ah, I'm coming," Kushina cried out, as a powerful orgasm started to roll over her. Her body fluids started to leak out, indicating that she was already far more than wet. Naruto saw her eyes rolling back into her head and a line of saliva drooling out of her mouth. He felt the contractions of her walls as tried to milk his seed. But he wasn't ready to come yet. He wanted to ravage this just a little longer. "You're so damn tight, I can't hardly move," Naruto grunted, having serious problems trying to maintain his steady thrusts. He decided to slow down a bit and use the rest to kiss her French style. She was weakened from her previous orgasm and gave his tongue instant access to her mouth. Inside her mouth started a playful battle between them. After exchanging saliva and love, Naruto returned to his previous pace and hammered. "I love the feeling of your boobs squished against my skin," Naruto whispered in her ear. He resorted to dirty talk in order to bring her closer to her second orgasm. Curiously, he remembered at this moment an article about techniques in the past. As he was already in the perfect position to test the knowledge, he gave it a try. Kushina's eyes widened by an unfamiliar sensation. "It's bumping against my walls. I'm coming a second T," Kushina cried as the next huge orgasms hit her. But before she could finish her sentence, Naruto sealed her mouth shut with another sloppy kiss. As her second orgasm faded away, her perception was already blurred. She wanted to be stained with his cum. Her womb was begging for the warm shower, but its best milking efforts were unanswered. She almost lost consciousness as she felt the immense pressure on the dam of her female ejaculation. Her dizzy eyes snapped open as a gushing fountain sprayed out. He waited for this moment. Her precious juice splattered against his genital, melting away the pain of nearly bursting balls. He felt the circling of sperm in his scrotum. He could only imagine the devastating outcome of his imminent ejaculation. He stopped his powerful thrust as the orgasm hit him like a sledgehammer, reaching deeper than ever before. His tip was buried in her cervix, already surpassing the definition of a mere kiss. He felt every movement of his seed. As a matter of fact, it was not a steady movement, rather thrusts. As her cervix sensed the looming shower, its mouth started to open, causing the tip to dive in a little bit farther. His cum would be sprayed without hindrance in her most sacred part. Small vibrations announced the beginning of the end, accompanied by his mighty roar, just to be splattered in the blink of an eye against the back of her womb. Kushina lost the remaining perception she had left, as an unstoppable series of white thick blobs sprayed in her womb. The powerful spurts of ejaculation went into business themselves, causing warm thick waves of seed to slosh around. After 30 seconds of strenuous squirting, Naruto's orgasm started to fade away. He got an indecently huge grin on his face, because this time outclassed easily the first 2 times with her. A quick glance at her face confirmed his assumptions. His lover was pretty much spaced out. As he felt the closing of her cervix's mouth on his member's tip, he expected that her womb must be filled up to the brim. He placed a genuine peck on her lips, causing her to regain her consciousness. "My womb is so full. I can feel your cum sloshing around." "Ah," Kushina moaned in a blissful state. "I couldn't help but spraying buckets of cum in you. But I promised you to stain your womb in white," Naruto whispered, relishing in the feeling of her inner canal caressing his enlarged member. "Ah, I nearly forgot. Happy Mother's Day, Kushina-chan," Naruto whispered before engaging her in another tongue battle. After his victory he added, "Even when I'm not currently your son." "Well, thank you, Naruto-kun," Kushina smiled and leaned in for another kiss. After their heated sexual intercourse she sensed a particular wetness in her back. "We didn't towel ourselves after showering. Now your bed is soaked. We may as well sleep in my bed. You're allowed to carry me," Kushina ordered playfully while giggling. "I'm allowed too. Well, it's an honor, Your Highness. Naruto thanked her with a wicked grin on his face, before releasing her restrained arms. He took her bridal style and carried them over to her bedroom. They crawled under the blanket with Kushina resting her head on his broad shoulder. Her index finger drew small circles on his muscular torso. That was heavenly, Kushina sighed dreamily. Yes, it was. We'll do it many times in the next few days. Brace yourself, Naruto warned her while moving his hand to her butt. You're poking my butthole, Kushina stated calmly. You can tell. Naruto asked innocent. It's my butthole baka. Kushina tried to sound angry, but a sweet tiredness took control of her. In the next moment Naruto could feel her warm steady breath against his skin. He smiled at her peaceful sight and thought to himself, I really love you, my most precious person. Author's note, hello everyone. It's Mother's Day not only in many countries throughout the world but in Konoha too. You may have noticed the use of Japanese expressions like kasen or baka. I decided to use them in a limited extent. That means there will be expressions in direct speech. For the rest I will resort to normal English expressions to describe things, no need to complicate a simple matter. At the end I want to respond to some reviews. Number 1. About Naruto calling Kushina different names. He calls her Kushina, Shina, Kushi when they are in lovers mode. At the beginning of the previous chapter they got in heated discussion. Naruto felt he would do more harm than good if he would call her in an affectionate form. Also she acted like his mother. Number 2. About Naruto reducing his perverseness. Kushina may be adjusting to it and become herself a little bit perverted. In my eyes it is nothing indecent, rather a loving act between two faithful lovers. Number 3. About adding Makoto in the harem. Sorry but that won't happen. Don't expect a harem scenario in the next 10 chapters. Naruto likes her because of previous events. Kushina and Makoto are close friends, so it's only natural that Naruto was around her in his childhood. I don't plan to pair Sasuke with his mother either. He has only eyes for his Koyuki Hime. Greetings Roadrunner. Chapter 5, A Wonderful Morning. The sun slid slowly over the treetops of the trees, which shaped a natural defense since the founding of this first shinobi village. The first rays of sun brought the wonder of nature back to life again. Petite and agile birds flew from tree to tree while chirping. The local flora started to wake up from their nightly sleep, as flowers angled their heads at the life-giving, everlasting sun. It was a peaceful morning in Hai no Kuni's biggest military base, called Konohagakure no Sato. In a particular house inside this great village, a couple experienced an especially peaceful morning. They lay in a semi-fetal position, his torso against her back and his genital against her buttocks. She was embraced by his muscular arm. It was a position which provided maximum physical contact and closeness between two love-struck people, thereby labeled as spoon position. The man's eyelids fluttered gently, as he could pick up a well-known scent. His now open eyes were allured by the beautiful female beside him. He pressed his nose in his lover's magnificent head of hair in order to inhale her flavor. Her warm, intimate odor brought a big smile to his face. He propped against his elbow to get a glimpse of her sleeping face. His female companion gave him a serene smile. Her facial expression betrayed her completely. He could read her like an open book. She had to be comfortable according to the joyful sounds she produced. He tenderly brushed a red strand of hair out of her face, causing the female to stir in her sleep. Her eyes opened halfway, indicating that she was in a dizzy, sleepy condition. His smile widened at her cute reaction, as he affectionately caressed her warm cheek with his fingers. She looked him straight in his eyes, thus causing a fairy tale-like meeting between the male's sapphire blue eyes and the female's violet eyes. She gave him a seductive look, as her tongue slid over her voluptuous lips, leaving behind a thin blanket of her juice. She tried to tease him by pursuing her lips, but her plan backfired as he noticed her mischievous attempt. He brought his lips close to hers, so that only a thin sheet of paper could fit in between them. Her eyes gave testimony of her bewilderment. She arched her back to close the infinite small gap between them, but her actions were anticipated. Unhappy about her defeat, she let her body fall back in the soft mattress, while changing her own rules of engagement. Her previous attempt to lure him into the first kiss of the day failed because of her offensive strategy. She would now resort to psychological warfare. His conscience would be the target of her attack. She gave him an hurtful glance, before averting her eyes, so that she wouldn't betray herself. He will soon fall in my trap, she thought while grinning mentally at her devious plan. His facial expression turned into a concerned one. His eyes were now full of regret, because he offended her feelings with his withdrawal of love and affection. He reduced the distance between their faces, while thinking of an appropriate method to ask hers forgiveness. He caressed her tip of nose with his own, causing her eyes to wander back to him. She considered herself satisfied with his display of affection. Her lips shivered with excitement as she could feel his warm breath on her lips. Only a little bit further and they will be connected. Only a blink of a second and then she could taste him again. She closed her eyes to concentrate her whole being on the imminent kiss. And then she could feel how his warm hand tenderly fondled her ample bosom. What the hell? The female questioned angrily, as a vein appeared on her forehead. She gave him a fulfilling accusing look. A look which could relate the story about a female being cheated of her yearningly awaited kiss. He gave her no further chance to continue her rant as he pressed his lips on hers, basically stealing her kiss because she was given no chance to prepare for it. Her muffled screams weakened as he battled her tongue with his own. It was only a matter of time until his eager youthfulness prevailed over her resistance. His hand wandered from her bosom to her hip, while he caressed the soft tissue of her skin. After their first time, he noticed that her skin was not the one of a 36-year-old female. It was so soft, yet firm, it could only belong to a woman in her prime, meaning that her body stopped its aging process in her early 20s. He shook his head as he thought about the wonders of nature. He grabbed his lover's hip with his available hand and pulled her body on top of him. However, the momentum was stronger than anticipated, causing the couple to roll over each other. A playful battle arose of this situation. Soon both female and male would be entangled into a mess of blankets and red hair, while kissing and groping each other. They continued their display of affection for another period of 30 minutes. Naruto, we have to stop, the woman panted through her moans, while as her lover produced big embarrassing hickeys on her unprotected neck. I don't want to, Naruto responded in between his attacks. You're acting like a spoiled child. The woman accused him as she purposelessly tried to push his head away from her neck. I am a only child. Naturally I'm spoiled. You're totally unreasonable, Kushina-chan, Naruto mocked her while he shifted his attention from her neck to her bosom. Ah, don't bite my nipples. Kushina exclaimed as she thought about a way to escape. Sorry, I'm really heated up. It's somewhat difficult to control myself now, Naruto apologized, while his head wandered from her bosom to her belly. I can't help but to feel excited, when imagining that your flat belly could be growing soon. I would kill to see you in a pregnant state, Naruto told her, while caressing her cute belly button. Don't be silly. I don't understand why I'm letting you ejaculate inside me without protection, Kushina responded her, while thinking about the possible consequences. I can tell you. It's because you absolutely love the feeling of my hot, thick sperm in your womb. Enough talk, Naruto said as his eyes gave her crotch a lustful glance. That glance was not unnoticed by Kushina. She slid back to the edge of the bed and was about to stand up, but Naruto grabbed her hips and pulled her on his lap. Her voluptuous buttocks rested on his thighs, while her back leaned against his muscular torso. Kushina was 5 inches smaller, but the difference in height was countered by her heightened, sitting position. He seized the chance to place a tender peck on her delicate cheek. His hands were roaming over her body in order to discover every hidden secret of her body. Naruto wanted to find her weak points. He really loved to tease her without mercy because of the adorable and cute reactions she did make. His left hand fondled her left while his right one descended to her crotch. Her body shuddered as his finger circled her entrance, following the line of her outer labia. Do you love it, when I'm caressing your labia? Naruto whispered his question in her ear with a naughty voice. Don't stop, Kushina pleaded as her breath started to be ragged. Naruto used the opportunity to coat his fingers and her labia with her juice. How did it feel to be covered in your own juice? Naruto continued his dirty talk as he whispered the next question in her ear. It's sticky. I love it, Kushina panted. She couldn't believe her own words. 4 days ago she would have never thought about doing dirty talk, let alone with her son. After deciding that she was wet enough, he stopped his foreplay, giving her a few seconds to catch breath. The mouth is also referred to as the infinite thin slit between her two labia. It's absolutely sealed shut, Naruto narrated while caressing her praised genital. Afterward he removed his finger from her genital, causing a fine thread of juice to dangle between his finger. That's a sight to behold. Don't you agree with me, Kushina-chan? Naruto whispered as he intensified his dirty game. Kushina was too embarrassed to answer his lewd question and buried her face in her hands. You're such a spoilsport, Naruto stated wickedly as he completely understood the embarrassment he caused for Kushina. Naruto twisted her fine thread around his finger before staring trance-like at his now shiny index finger. Do you want to eat it? He asked her as he tried to suppress a chuckle. What do you think? Kushina said as she angrily threw back his bold question. I hadn't thought otherwise. Time for plan B, Naruto thought while he executed his devious plan. He licked off the juice from his finger, much to the horror of Kushina. Afterward he locked her lips with his own, while he pitilessly intruded her mouth with his tongue and thus mixing her love juice with their saliva. Resistance is futile, darling, Naruto playfully teased her again before he would release her out from his lap. It was indeed a wonderful morning. Kushina stood in the kitchen as she prepared breakfast. Her head was still dizzy from their previous encounter. She had never experienced such an erotic morning with a lot of kissing, petting and groping. Her mind wandered back to Naruto's excited comments about seeing her in a pregnant state. It was already too late to think about protection. We did it 2 times 3 days ago. At the first time Naruto overpowered me and exploited my weakened state. He even ignored me when I'm told him not to come inside me. Kushina thought as she recalled the past, and at the second time in front of the mirror. Well, and naturally he ejaculated inside me again. 3 days, huh? Think about it, Kushina. You had to learn the boring stuff about child making at the academy. Kushina tried to gather the basic facts from her forgotten memories. His sperm should have wandered through my uterine tubes by now. And provided that I had an ovulation at the correct time, then his sperm could fertilize my egg by now. Kushina turned pale after recapitulating the basis events. I can only hope that I didn't have my ovulation at the correct time, Kushina muttered without realizing that Naruto observed her the whole time. Are you already pregnant? Naruto asked with a huge grin on his face, while he sat at the kitchen table. This is no time for joking. Kushina responded, slightly agitated, as she turned around. Maybe you are not fertile anymore. It's not like you guys hadn't tried it, Naruto teased her again in his ruthless manner. What did you say? I'm an Uzumaki clanswoman, Kushina replied furiously. She visibly vivid by now. She's pretty proud of her ancestry, he thought, while observing how she finished her preparations for breakfast despite her angry emotional condition. Here, eat up, Kushina nearly commanded as she put down his plate on the table. No, Naruto answered nonchalantly. He noticed a change in her eyes. Their expressions changed from angry to stunned to very angry. She was about to lash out at him verbally, as he grabbed her and pulled her on his lap. You're going to feed me, he stated while putting on a huge grin on his face. You can't be serious, she replied in a shocked condition. She tried to wriggle free but his arms already snaked around her hips, holding her firmly in place. Why shouldn't I be serious? You acknowledged it yesterday. There are still 9 days left with us being lovers, Naruto grinned at her. Her previous anger was already gone as a deep red blush decorated her face. She complied with his task and started to feed him with rice. It tastes at least twice as good as when you're going to be fed by a beautiful woman, Naruto exclaimed happily, causing Kushina's blush to intensify. I'm really happy. It feels good when there's someone who really enjoys your presence, Kushina thought, and a small grin appeared on her face, despite the embarrassing situation. You're quite heavy, Naruto stated while he shifted her on his lap. Kushina's smile fell instantly as she tried to wriggle free with more vigor than the last time. However, his ensnarement was still firm. You misunderstood me, Naruto exclaimed, but that lessened her struggle in no way. He added, Arg, girl. What I'm saying is that your weight feels quite nice. Kushina stopped her effortless fight and gave him an accusing glance, before saying, you shouldn't comment a woman's weight. I thought you were smarter. I only wanted to say that it feels right to have you sitting on my lap, he spoke in a serene voice, while giving a sheepish grin. Kushina narrowed her eyes at his last comment, unsure about whether she should forgive him or not. I insist on compensation, Kushina told him. Before turning her head away she simulated a sulky behavior, although she had already forgiven him. Oh, what could you possibly want? Naruto asked the question more to himself than to her, causing her to sneak a peek at his face. Then we could make a baby, but perhaps we already did that already, he added his second idea. Kushina turned her head back at him and slapped him on his arm. Not good. Then let us do something funny today, Naruto expressed his final idea. Kushina began to panic as she remembered something important. I nearly forgot, Makoto invited me to their annual party. Sorry, but you'll have to do the funny things alone, Kushina told him. She left the kitchen as he released her from his lap. A party, huh? Naruto chuckled as he thought about the funny things he could do there. Chapter 6, The Party. It was already late afternoon as two familiar people followed the way to Konoha's Uchiha district. The woman was clad in a light blue kimono, which was decorated with golden ornaments on its long sleeves. The kimono's hem nearly reached her ankles, so that she had to step carefully to avoid staining the expensive dress. Her complicated dress was secured by an obi, which was folded like a flower on her back. Directly above her elaborated knot graced and unique rhombus-shaped clan sign, the kimono's backside. The sign was cut in half in the middle. The upper side of the embroidery bore the image of waves boat, whereas the lower side bore the image of the wind feng. This sign visualized the family's name, Namikaze Bo Feng. Her companion wore a similar kimono with the same sign on its back, although his obi was less dramatically folded than hers. It achieved its use, holding the delicate dress together. They continued their march in complete silence. Every now and then the man would risk a glance at the beautiful woman beside him. Her face was pale through the extensive use of powder. Her paleness was perfectly contrasted by her dark red lips, for which she certainly used her favorite lipstick. Her current appearance was the epitome of elegance and femininity. We will be perfectly on time. There is no need to be angry with me anymore, Naruto spoke as he tried to soothe her. He offered her his arm. She turned her head and gave him a disapproving glare. Nevertheless, she accepted his offer and linked her arm with his. I'm still angry, Kushina stated sourly. She wouldn't forgive him so easily this time. He had disturbed her several times while she tried to get dressed for the upcoming party. Normally, she would have done her hair, but because of Naruto's antics there was simply no time anymore. She almost had to abandon her makeup as well. I'm sorry, he apologized while rubbing the back of his head. He couldn't suppress the sheepish grin from appearing on his face, giving Kushina doubts about his honesty. Her doubts were completely justified, because he enjoyed the afternoon greatly. He tried to help her with her search for the perfect dress for the day's occasion. Naturally, his search was limited to her underwear. As Naruto and Kushina entered the Uchiha district, they could see some of the other guests. For many, it was a rare possibility to meet the very important people in the village. The heads of the major clans would be surrounded by a lot of people who had tried to establish a steady relationship between them. Those people were heads of Konoha's smaller clans and rich merchants. Both groups wanted to be invited in the higher circles of Konoha's hierarchy. The first group tried to form alliances through arranged marriages between their heirs, but no major clan head wanted to waste an heir for a small unknown clan. The second group used their huge asset for wooing, in other words simple bribery. However, Konoha's clans hadn't any money troubles, because the village prospered without limitations under the reign of their fourth Hokage. And then there was the family of the called Hokage. Nobody got more focus from the people who desperately wanted to step up the social ladder. Before his first birthday, Naruto had received more than 20 proposals for an arranged marriage. But neither Minato nor Kushina wanted to force him in an arranged relationship. They thought he should have the chance to find his own happiness. It was hilarious how some people tried to befriend the Hokage through his son. However, Minato was soft-hearted by nature and ultimately it was Kushina's task to filter the genuine requests from the false ones. The basic principles of befriending the Hokage changed dramatically. You had to first get on Kushina's good side to build up a friendly relationship with the Hokage's family, giving her the reputation of a matriarch. Either they are totally overdressed or we are miserably underdressed, Naruto stated after seeing the clothing of a merchant's wife. There was so much fur, her mantle alone must have demanded the death of an entire family of furry creatures. I really hate these political occasions, Kushina groaned. You should have stayed at home. Now you will suffer my destiny. What do you think of me? I would never abandon you. If it means spending the evening at a boring party, I will be perfectly fine as long as you're with me, he spoke in a sweet voice. Kushina was speechless at his touching statement. Well, maybe it wasn't so bad to take you with me, she responded while turning her head away in order to conceal her growing smile from him. Ah, are you blushing? So cute. Naruto teased her and received instantly his punishment in form of a light slap on his arm. You're terrible, Kushina groaned again, as she rubbed her temple. And you love it, he responded with a huge grin on his face, causing her to roll her eyes. As they were about to enter the mansion, Kushina gave him one last sharp glare, indicating that he should behave himself for his own good. Kushina-chan. Oh, my. I didn't expect you with an escort. And so handsome too. Makoto giggled as she greeted her friend. Kushina was about to answer her, as Naruto took the opportunity. Good evening, Makoto Dono. I would like to thank you for your invitation to this party on behalf of the Namikaze clan. Maybe you would give us the honor to visit us in the near future, so that we can express our gratitude in the appropriate way. He finished his greeting as he placed a small kiss on the back of her hand. Naruto. I told you to behave. What are you doing? Kushina questioned him in a low voice. She didn't want to cause a ruckus. I'm merely greeting our party's host in the proper way. What do you think of me, Kasama? I'm hurt, Naruto sighed dramatically. However, Kushina didn't believe his farce for a second. Oh, my. Naruto, you are lately turning into such a heartthrob. I hope your cousin knows how lucky she is, Makoto responded, as a small blush appeared on her cheeks. She placed a hand on her cheek and tilted her head, giving her female friend a serene smile. You are terrible, both of you. Kushina said. Both of them couldn't help but laugh after hearing her accusal. On the matter of teasing, Makoto and Naruto were professionals, especially when the victim was Kushina. You can already go ahead and enjoy the party. I've to receive the other guests, Makoto stated as she was about to greet the next pair of guests. And Naruto, tease your cousin for me. After the last statement, the so-called cousin gave her son a stern look which someone could easily translate into, don't you dare. He gave her an innocent facial expression as they walked arm in arm to the mansion's main hall. Like in the laws of attraction, the similarly dressed Namikaze duo were approached by nearly everyone on the party. The young bachelorettes tried to engage Naruto in a senseless conversations about his role as future clan head. Every now and then they mentioned his missing female counterpart, while giving him a seductive glance and twinkle in their eyes. Kushina's fate was far worse though. She had to endure never-ending suggestions about improving Konoha's economical competitiveness. She explained several times that they had to speak directly to her husband and that she wouldn't forward their ideas, but her words fell on deaf ears. Ultimately the duo was rescued by Makoto, as she returned from greeting the last guests. Makoto Dono, you're an angel of mercy. Naruto exaggerated shamelessly, as he put his hands together to pray for her well-being. If I hear one more word about foreign trade, I will go postal, Kushina added, while giving her friend a warmly smile as a sign of gratitude. I would like to spend more time with you, but I've got to take care of the other guests. Can't show favoritism here, Makoto said, while she gave them her signature wink. She disappeared almost instantly into the thick crowd of guests. Afterward, Naruto used the rare togetherness to glance at Kushina, while he thought how he could tease her in the best way. Don't even think about it, his supposed victim stated, as she gave him a killing glance. If looks could kill. But without sacrifices, there will be no gain, he thought, as he raised his hands in order to signalize his surrender. What do you want to do now, Kasama? He asked submissively. Kushina couldn't believe her eyes, he even bowed in front of her. To avoid further embarrassments, she took his hand, dragging him over to the next exit. She carefully avoided the other guests, despite her crazy speed. Every now and then she had to sidestep to evade people, which only served to annoy her, or so she thought. She was about to reach the safe haven, as her lucky streak ended abruptly. She crashed with all her momentum into another person, causing both of them to fall down on the hard, parquet floor. Ouch! What the heck? Are ya trying to kill me? The knocked-down person asked angrily. I'm very sorry. Wait, Sume, what are you doing here? Kushina spoke, astonished, as she noticed her companion from older days, the pain from the crash already forgotten. Shina, what do you think I'm doing here? I was on my way to plunder the buffet with no ill intents, as some insane redhead tackled me over, the now identified Sume answered, while she stood up and brushed off the dust. Naruto observed the interaction between the two women with interest, before he decided to pick up his mother. Naturally she objected, but her protests fell on deaf ears. Sume-san, I must apologize on behalf of my rude Kasama. Her manners are not the best, Naruto said, while he bowed in front of her. Huh, trying to annoy Shina. Keep up the good work, Naruto. Sume laughed heartily. Kushina couldn't believe her own eyes as yet another friend betrayed her tonight. First Makoto and now Sume. Apparently they liked to make an unholy pact with the devil incarnate, also known as Naruto. But her bewildered condition changed swiftly, as she grasped the sheer magnitude of the conspiracy against her person. Her facial expression reflected her newfound knowledge as she narrowed her eyes at them. She's so cute when she's fuming. Haha, Shina cannot handle embarrassing situations very well. She'll soon try something stupid. Tell ya. Hey, stop talking about me. Kushina tried to stop them, unsuccessfully. Sume-san, you surely know some funny stories about her. You wouldn't mind to share them. You know, the embarrassing ones, Naruto asked with an evil glint in his eyes. Sure, I'll tell ya some epic tales about Lil, Shina, but let's first grab us something to eat. I'm starving, Sume practically bellowed in laughter. Kushina hadn't any other choice but to follow them and doing her best to hinder Sume from telling stories from her past, which should already be long forgotten. What? I can't believe this, Naruto stated, astonished. He couldn't believe the crazy story his mother's friend was telling him. You bet. I'm not lying, Sume assured with a feral grin on her face. Over the last hour, Sume related a story from Kushina's academy days, while they ate exquisite slices of roast pork. The Uchihas did things in style, the meat was prepared first class. On the other hand, Kushina didn't touch her plate at all. She had lost her appetite, since she couldn't stop reviving the old memories. And of all things, Sume had to choose this particular one. She looked absolutely mortified, her face looked even paler than before. Kasama, you have really changed over the years, Naruto diagnosed with his signature grin on his face. Huh, Kushina responded, slightly absent-minded. She had lost any perception somewhere in Sume's narration. It was probably her mind's own safety mechanism to avoid psychical damage. Are you alright? Naruto was slightly worried, he even carefully waved in front of her face to cause a sign of life. But her lack of reaction didn't change. Don't worry. Soon she will be herself again, probably, Sume said, not in the slightest worried about the redhead's pitiful condition. Hello Kushina-san, Naruto-san. And you Sume, didn't you only want to grab something to eat and return afterward? Now I was chosen to look for you. What a drag, Shikaku said, slightly furious. The mischievous duo blinked at the new arrival. Nara's Shikaku and his son, Shikamaru, were known for their laziness, but the older Nara's statement sounded akin to a rant. And that was practically unheard of. Ah, sorry Shikaku, but it's really Shina's fault. She crashed into me, so I had to tell Naruto some old stories. Sume's excuse was very weak, but Shikaku wasn't in the mood to press things further. After all, it would be way too troublesome. He then directed his gaze at Naruto, who became a little nervous under his calculated vision. Naruto-san, do you have time for me? I would like talk with you. Talk with me? Yeah, sure, Naruto accepted the Nara's strange request. But first he asked Sume to keep an eye on his incapacitated mother, before he followed the older shinobi outside. They stood by the mansion's rich decorated balustrade, their view directed at the beautiful garden, which was located at the mansion's backside. The terrace was completely illuminated through the powerful light of the full moon. What do you know about my occupation within the village? Shikaku's question was merely rhetorical. He was completely sure that Naruto knew very well about Konoha's complicated and ensnared political situation. Naruto could already guess the topic of this conversation, as he narrowed his eyes because of his newfound knowledge. First of all, you can drop the sand. I've known since ages. After all, I used to hang out with Shikamaru when we were kids, Naruto said, before directing his gaze at the seasoned shinobi. You're the head of the Nara clan. Being clan head, on its own, is respectable enough, but that means nothing compared to your work as Jonin commander. I would dare to say, that you have more political power than the 2 village councilors. And naturally you spend a lot of time with our Hokage. Naruto finished his summary, before he redirected his gaze at the pond in front of them. Very well, I won't ask you why you said, our Hokage, instead of, my father. But I have to address a very serious topic. Our Hokage, and I, we both think that you are wasting your potential. After being trained by Jiraiya-sama and Tsunade-sama, you instantly achieved the rank of Jonin. In terms of skill, you are at the top, far better than most of our seasoned Jonin. But in terms of political awareness, you are apparently not interested. You are a good shinobi, you could be great one. Someone who could be a great personality in the future, fitting to be Hokage. Shikaku spoke with unknown vigor. Are you finished? Naruto asked, clearly uninterested, while his eyes followed the fluid movements of a particular colorful koi carp in the pond in front of them. Minato didn't lie when he said that you would react unreasonably. But you cannot run away from the responsibility forever. However, I'm sure, it is the proper motivation you are lacking. Shikaku finished his speech, before he turned around to return to the mansion's main hall. Me, a Hokage? Don't make me laugh. I'll never strive for that position, Naruto responded nonchalantly in such a manner, that someone could nearly hear the venom in his voice dripping on the floor. His remark caused Shikaku to stop in his tracks. The clan head turned his head to look at him again. Naruto's position was unchanged. The young adult still leaned against the terrace's balustrade, his head deep sunk in rebellious thoughts. His gaze remained at the young shinobi, which was completely illuminated by the moonlight. He waited few seconds before he spoke, never say never. This party is outstanding, Fukugu-sama. And your lovely wife is a superb host. I cannot express my gratitude for your invitation in the appropriate manner, some merchant said in an aristocratic dialect. Well, he tried to sound as one. Naturally, there were other persons around the Uchiha's clan leader and his wife. All of them tried to gain the couple's favor. Their efforts were interrupted as a young, male Uchiha approached the crowd and placed his mouth near Fugaku's ear. You wanted to be informed. When they arrives, Fugaku-sama, the unnamed one whispered in his clan head's ear. If you may excuse me, I've something to take care of. Makoto, please continue to tend to our guests, Fugaku spoke, before he started to march off to a part of the mansion, which was not open for the public. 5 minutes later, he finally reached his destination. 2 Uchiha, with activated Sharingan Xie Lun Yan to notice every form of Genjutsu Huan Shu, acted as guards. They cleared the path for their leader and opened the door to the mansion's inner sanctum. The room was dark, only the rays of a dimmed light illuminated the outlines of the 8 shady persons inside. Fugaku took his right place as the Uchiha clan's leader at the tea table's head. He activated his own Sharingan and with 3, the maximum count of tomos started to spin in his eyes. The other Uchiha did the same. 8 pairs of full matured Sharingans were directed at him, now he could be sure about their identity. Fugaku, let us begin our meeting immediately, one of the unknown Uchiha spoke with power in his voice. We would like to hear your plans for our clan, the Uchiha at the end of the table said with interest. Uchiha, the clan of the fire user. The clan with the power of the Sharingan, also known as the Heaven's Eye. The clan who has co-founded this very village. It is time to take what was ours to begin with, Fugaku spoke with pride and determination. What do you mean by that? The Uchiha directly beside him asked, with a hint of discomfort in his voice. Fugaku's Sharingan started to spin madly, before he continued his speech. Our great ancestor was betrayed by the traitorous Senju, as they named themselves Shadaime and Nadaime Hokage in their own autocratic way. Moreover, they betrayed us again as the Nadaime appointed that weak-minded fool of Sarutobi to be the Sandaime Hokage. And the epitome of impudence was the coronation of that nobody Namikaze. 4 generations of Hokage and each time the Uchiha were overlooked. The indignity comes to an end now. The Yondaime will be dead soon and then I'll be Hokage. And that's the end of part 2. The whirlpool no longer sleeps, it protects, it loves, and it demands answers. If you're feeling this story, like, share, and subscribe to Fox Fanfiction. Comment, Whirlpool Part 3 inches if you want to see how deep this bond truly goes.